Chapter accounting practices. I know you're on the edge of your seats, so fasten your seatbelts, folks. All right. Well, thank you, Dana. I appreciate that. So how many of you are chapter board members? Pretty much all of you, I'm guessing. Okay, that's what I was thinking. How many treasurers do we have here in the audience today? Several, very good. So some of you might be here just to learn more about chapter operations, and maybe you want to serve on the board in the future. So there's lots of different people here in the audience, but we're going to kind of try to gear this towards, it's mostly towards, a little bit towards treasurers, but a lot towards just chapter operations in general and the board, their responsibilities in regard to finances and so forth. So if you are a board member, you have a fiduciary duty. Sorry, falling down on the job here. The fiduciary duty and a fiscal responsibility to oversee the chapter's assets. This is not matching this, sorry. As a treasurer, the responsibility is executing the transactions at the board's direction. Although the treasurer is typically the most involved with the nuts and bolts of preparing the financial statements, collecting bank statements, balancing the books, and so forth, all chapter board members should have an understanding of the accounting practices. So that's a question you may be asking yourself. Some of you are new to serving on a chapter board. I'm on the board, now what? So the primary job of the board is to ensure the viability of the organization with several pronged approach, a clear strategic plan, sound policies and funding, information necessary to make sound business decisions. And basically a nonprofit is run, to be successful, should be run like a for-profit business, only difference being that you're going to plow your profits back into your mission and services for your people. Okay, there we go. As a board, you're going to ask yourself certain questions when you go to make decisions. What decisions do you need to make? How we're going to spend the money, how we're going to serve our people. These are all things that you're going to encounter as you make decisions as a chapter. What are the drivers of your decisions? Your mission, of course, is going to be the main driver of your decisions. And what data do you need to measure and monitor those factors? When we talk about mission-driven, we always want to keep that in mind in terms of how we serve our customers, our survivors in this case, and we want to not stray far from that mission. There are business decisions that you'll make along the way, but always at the heart, you need to keep that in the back of your mind. What's going to be best for the chapter? What's going to be best for the survivors? The importance of financial reporting, again, pretty dry information here, not really entertaining, but it is important, and we do need to keep tabs on this. It provides you a snapshot of the data that you have. As a nonprofit, again, we want to focus on fulfilling that mission. And what is our mission? Rebuilding the shattered lives of survivors. And we need to be good stewards of our money. We're using other people's money. It's difficult in this day and age to get donations. I spent a lot of time working in the development department, but people are more aware now, I think, than they ever were before. When they go to donate money, they want to make sure that it's going to a good cause and that it's being stewarded properly. People are making responsible decisions with that. So when you get money in, you need to record where did it come from. All of these things are important in your bookkeeping process and preparing your financial reports. when money is taken out or expended, what was it expended for? Has it been voted on? The board must approve all expenditures. There are differences in treasurer's reports. Yes, Dana?
You said the board has to approve all expenditures?
Yes. And there are two different ways that you can go about doing that. One is to have a pre-approved budget in advance. Say you're going to set a limit for your Christmas party. Well, we're going to spend, X number of dollars. Or when there's a line of duty death, we're going to spend up to X number of dollars on flowers or different things like that. So you can budget for them in advance, but as you go along, and your chapter can decide within your SOPs a certain limit, anything over such and such amount, we need to have, well, definitely if you have any expenditures over $500, you need to have 2 people on the board sign that check. But there's a lot of differences in how people approach that. But basically at the heart of it, whether it's approved in advance in terms of a budget or if it's approved as you go along as expenses arise, you need to have approval of the board for expenditures. The audit review, that's something that we'll be working on here shortly. The SOPs and bylaws committee, I believe they're in the process of perhaps changing the name of that piece of documentation. There was some confusion, audit review versus audit, but the cutoff on that is if your chapter has net assets of 200,000 or more, then you're required to do an audit with a professional accounting firm or an outside auditor. Most chapters don't have that amount of money to worry about, and we hope that we'll all get there at some point, but if you're under that level, you do it has been called an audit review, and they're going to be changing the name of that to a financial review. But it's a pretty simple form. It's got 5 or 6 questions on there. You have your audit committee get together and go over that. But I would encourage you to take that a little bit seriously. It's tempting to maybe just check the box, yep. But you want to make sure that you've got your questions answered before you just check off a box on that. Financial ethics and accountability. This is one of the forms that you'll fill out whenever you have an election. Some chapters have them yearly, some of them have staggered terms, and some have 2-year terms. So every time that you get a new board, we need everybody on the board to sign that financial ethics and accountability form, whether you've been on the board before or not. Everybody needs to re-sign that document whenever you have an election. It addresses financial reporting and management practices, conduct in regard to fiscal management, and record retention schedule. Some of the things that you'll address as you look through the financial ethics and accountability that are broken down in there: the code of ethics, the financial report and management practices, conduct in regard to fiscal management, and the record retention schedule. We'll break those down a little bit. Some of the other aspects that are addressed are the quarterly financial statements, your annual 990, internal controls, the audit, whistleblower protection, and the conflict of interest policy. I just had a question on that from a chapter the other day, and that is outlined in the financial ethics and accountability form. Some of the topics that are addressed in there also would include integrity. Is it lawful? Are you being a responsible steward of your chapter's funds? And transparency. You want your chapter members and any outside auditors that might ever be involved to, it should be clear to them what we're doing here. There should be no questions about, well, what does this mean, or how did that get from here to there? So you want to keep your records transparent. And again, mission focused. Can't stress that enough. It's one of the biggies. The treasurer's duties, specifically addressing that part of this that's geared towards the treasurers, is to have custody of the books, file the quarterly and annual reports, maintain the checking and savings accounts, deposit funds promptly, Make sure the annual audit or audit review, financial review is conducted. Provide the treasurer's report at every business meeting and maintain all permits, forms, and regulations required by law. There is a balance to be achieved when dealing with the chapter's money and the finances, being the treasurer or just being a member of the board. You need to consider the needs of the chapter, whether you want to go with a volunteer or a professional in terms of keeping track of your accounting records, doing your yearly taxes and so forth. And there are two different options that we use here at C.O.P.S to achieve that. One is an Excel spreadsheet that has been prepared for us. It's pretty simple to understand. It's straightforward. And there are 5 different sheets on there that address the different aspects of the accounting that you need to keep track of. Get over here. So those tabs are the cover sheet, the reconciliation, in transit, cash receipts, and cash disbursements. There are formulas in many of the cells, and when you get into your handout there, you'll see some red ink, and those are the cells that you don't want to type anything in. There's formulas in there, and that's going to help you calculate, make things so much easier for you. It's pretty much spoon-fed if you just follow along with the directions there. I won't go over the whole thing. But a lot of chapters find that to be a very useful tool. And like I say, it's pretty simple and straightforward. There are other chapters where maybe you've got somebody that's got accounting experience or tax experience, something like that. They may choose to go with a software such as QuickBooks, and that's the other option that we use here at C.O.P.S. I would definitely caution on the QuickBooks. That if you're going to use that, you want somebody that's experienced at it, not someone who's going to say, hey, I think I can learn that. You want somebody who knows what they're doing if they're going to use that. So I feel like the introductory tool for the financials is probably going to be your Excel. And if you have somebody that's more skilled in that and has that experience, then feel free to use the QuickBooks. That's totally up to your chapter and what you decide as a board that you want to go with there. Yes.
If your chapter is already using one and you don't feel comfortable and you don't have that background, can you move back to the Excel?
I don't see why that wouldn't be allowable. I mean, it should be translatable. They're all going to give you the same information at the end of the day. It just looks a little bit different on the sheet, but I think that's something that I can see where a chapter might run into that. Perhaps you had someone before that was a professional accountant or had that experience with the QuickBooks and it worked for them, but then they've handed the torch on to the next person and it's like a little bit much. So yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't be something that could be done. It might take a little bit to transition back, but I don't think there's any rules against it. Yes, Connie?
Can I reply?
Yes.
Some things that a lot of people don't understand with QuickBooks is when you start doing the transaction, if it's already been done in the past, which is a lot of our transactions are repeat transactions, it'll automatically fill in, and is all you need to do is change dollar amounts. So it's definitely worth playing with.
So I'll kind of let you guys go over those at your leisure. It's extremely dry, but there is some good information in there, and after you take a look at it, you can kind of get a feel for it. You see the little arrows there pointing you to where the important parts are. Yes.
I was just going to add to that, if you can balance a checkbook, you can do QuickBooks. It may take a little bit of a learning curve, but at the end of the year, that learning curve saves you because you've got reports that are coming up. So it took a little while on the learning curve in QuickBooks. I'm not an accountant, but I'm an old IT guy. learning how it was doing it makes that quarterly report so much easier, because all I turn around as soon as we get there, print my quarterly reports, boom, 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 send it off to national, and they're happy. At the end of the year, I can do that for the chapter too. So don't be discouraged. And then we can talk offline about QuickBooks and what we need to change and do and how to get help to each other. So I kind of encourage it just because it does make it easier. And then I've got another board member as a secondary on QuickBooks, so to keep me honest. So they've got access to it and they can look at it too. They may not know what's going on in QuickBooks, but they can look at it, so.
All right, do we have any other questions? Yes.
I was just wondering if anybody else has had the same trouble I've had with the older Microsoft and now going to the new Microsoft, the 365. When I go back on my flash drive or go back to look at the reports past years, I get a blue screen
That
with nothing
sounds
on it.
very scary. Yes, it does.
Now, I did get somebody that was an IT person that came in and showed me how to get around it. But I wondered if anybody else, because what we had was like 2007 to 2010 Microsoft program, and then what it's gone to, 365. And you can get around it, so don't panic if that's what happens, but it's not easy.
Well, I would love for you to share that information, Kathy, perhaps on our forum, so that other chapters, if and when they do run into that problem, will have a resource. Because I'm about as far from an IT genius as you're going to get. I have people that I can call on, but it's good to know that you've already had that experience and walked that road, and maybe you can share that with the rest of us in case anybody else runs into that. That's good information. Thank you. Okay, here's some things that you're going to look for if you're using that Excel report. Does it balance? There's 4 lines, or there's several lines there. You want line 4, which is your bank balance, to match with your line 12, your book balance on the reconciliation sheet. Are disbursements correct and expenditures approved? Was it voted on? Was the vote documented in the minutes? That's something that you want to always be aware of and conscious of, especially if there's any kind of a question later on, like, I thought we decided this. Well, I thought we decided that. You can go back to your minutes and find out exactly what we did decide. Because questions do arise from time to time, and memories can get a little fuzzy here and there. So it's best to have everything documented in those minutes so you can refer back to them. Yes, Kathy?
There was another thing that I have found that's very, very easy for me to do as I open up and I look back, like Cindy will be asking me what we spent on our Christmas in December. Okay. I can actually, I've got a stamp. I can go back and look. I've got the date that I spent the money. And then on next thing, I've got the meeting, my board meeting on that. And then I'm saying what category, like we've covered underneath, say the secretary's part. The secretary needed
Okay.
new stuff. I can actually go and look at that invoice and see when it was voted on and what time.
That's good to
On
have all
that
that
invoice.
information all together there. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's all right there, so I look at it and I know where to go and see where it was voted on my invoice.
Exactly. Good.
I'm passing this around. We forgot the last section, so sign in or initiate in 2 boxes.
Thank you. Just for your attendance. Sorry, my bad. All right, moving on, we're looking at the benefits of a software program. Again, it's just a matter of taste. Now, Connie, I know, has accounting experience, and so she's probably going to lean more towards that QuickBooks side of things. And if that's second nature to you, or if you want to learn something new and exciting, for sure, I would definitely venture down that road. If you're apprehensive and you've not done this before, it might be better to test the waters with the Excel first. It's just a matter of your own personal taste. But some of the benefits of the software program, it's going to do those calculations for you, so technically it should be more accurate. But it depends on what you put in. I don't know if any of you old schoolers remember the old garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, so. And consistency of your presentation and reports. You're going to see the same things month after month. And when you send your forms in to us at National, we're going to know, okay, I need to look on page 3 in column B to find the number that I'm looking for. If you want to get really fancy and do an online option with the QuickBooks, that allows multiple users to access that. So your board, if maybe you're meeting by Zoom or something, we can all be looking at it and say, okay, look over here on column C on line 4, what was this about? Did we vote on that? I thought we decided this and that. So everybody's looking at the same thing, even if you're having to meet remotely. So that's an advantage of that. You don't need a dedicated computer to keep that on. We encourage you, if you're doing the books at home or whatever, to have a dedicated computer for that, and try not to mix it so much with your personal stuff. That can, if things crashed, we'd be in a world of hurt. So, and always back everything up. Save your work, save your work, save your work. TechSoup is a nonprofit subscription you can get for $50 a year, and that can kind of help you a little bit more with those kind of IT issues that you might encounter, like Kathy's talking about. We don't have as much staff in that area as I would like. I'd like to have somebody on staff that could be able to help you guys whenever you run into a snag, but that's just not really a viable solution right now. So that is a solution that you might want to look into if you have struggles like I do with IT issues. That's totally worth the money. $50 a year is great, yeah. If you're using that software accounting program, such as QuickBooks, you want to include your profit and loss detail, also known as a statement of activity. A balance sheet is your statement of financial position. And the general ledger, very important, is going to have your transaction detail on there. So you'll be able to keep track of that money coming in and that money going out that we talked about earlier. Merchandise asset inventory tracking, if applicable, it says, which is probably not applicable to very many of you. Some of the larger chapters, kind of some of the things that Kim was describing, selling different items and doing different fundraisers like that, they may have an inventory that they want to keep track of. But, and hopefully, again, that's something that all of our chapters will eventually grow into in terms of fundraising and growing and getting more people involved. We certainly don't want to grow by means of losing any other officers, but just getting those of us that have already suffered a loss more involved in fundraising and so forth, and being able to turn that around, as Kim mentioned, back into your own community of survivors, getting them more involved, and just growing the support that we have for each other. This is kind of what the profit and loss statement looks like if you're using the QuickBooks. It looks a bit different than the Excel, but it's just a matter of just the appearance of it, I would say, more than anything. So to calculate the profit and loss, it's kind of the same formulas that you would use with the Excel. It just appears a little bit differently. You got your income less your expenses equals your net income. The balance sheet, you want your assets to equal the liabilities and equity. And the general ledger, that's where you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the transactions, all the different accounts that you may have to keep track of. So checklist, this used to be called Amy's checklist. She's our accounting manager and finance director now, I guess. She is very thorough, as you should be whenever you're dealing with money and accounting. So you want to have, again, that prior approval of all expenditures in your minutes. Again, whether that is based on your budget or whether it's based by decisions made as you go, step by step. And that would include debit and credit cards. You want to have that recorded in the minutes, a motion, a second, a vote, and then document that. If someone says, well, I motion that we spend $500 on Christmas gifts for the children this year, somebody else, will second the motion, or maybe there'll be a discussion about it. Then you vote on it and document that, okay, this is what we decided. We talked about this and the pros and cons thereof, and this is what we decided. This is one of Amy's favorite words, receipts, receipts, receipts. So, yeah. Sometimes those little things can slip away from you, but do try to keep track of those. It's very important to have that documentation for an audit trail. That word I know has bad connotations and it can be kind of scary. It's more likely than not that you're never going to face an audit, but in the event that you ever did, you will be so glad that you have all this documentation, you have all your receipts, all the backup that you need. You don't have that panic deer in the headlights look when you hear that word. And signatures, as I mentioned earlier, any expenditures over $500, those checks would need 2 signatures on them. Yes, Tracy?
Just wanted to clarify, is it $501 and above then is not equal to or greater than 500? Because I was told 500 and above.
Yeah, yeah. I believe that's the cutoff, if it's 500 or more. Yeah,
500 or more,
yeah.
greater than or equal to.
So a lot of people be writing checks for $4.99 now, I guess. I don't know. 2 checks for $2.50 maybe, I don't know. Follow those SOPs and bylaws. I'm fairly new to this position. I'm still familiarizing myself with those documents, but every chapter should have access to those. We have them posted on our website. We're in the process right now of updating the bylaws to include changes that were made in 2021. So if you all are lacking those documents or you can't find a copy of it or whatever, do please reach out to us at National and we can get those for you. It's something, as far as the SOPs go, I wanted to mention that some chapters have SOPs of their own and some do not. There's some leeway there for your chapter to create your own SOPs, what you want your procedures to be and so forth. I had a chapter I was dealing with recently that was having an issue concerning mileage. And so we kind of talked it out and came to the conclusion what we need to have here is some SOPs, like, okay, we're going to pay this much for reimbursement and these people are eligible for it. Think of all the different aspects that might go into that decision and document that so that when a decision like that comes up, when a situation comes up, you're going to say, well, let's look at the SOPs. Let's see what they say. We don't require chapters to have SOPs. You are allowed to have them. We would encourage you, if you do have them, to please send them to us so that we can vet them and make sure that they don't conflict with National's SOPs or bylaws. And that's one of the main things as far as the SOPs go. We just want to make sure that your SOPs don't conflict with anything that National has going in our SOPs and our bylaws. I think it's a good idea, too, for us to have them. They haven't really had the staff to collect them and review them so much in the past, but that's something that we're going to kind of shoot towards in the future. And that is pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions about accounting? You, too, could have an exciting career in accounting. You'll see my recruiter at the back of the room. Yeah. Okay. I know there are many of you here that have much more experience than I do in doing the treasurer role and having that financial background and so forth. So if anybody has any maybe advice that they want to share, if you don't have any questions for me, maybe you've run into a situation like Kathy was describing. That's such good information to know if we were ever to find ourselves where she was, like, oh my gosh, this is not compatible, what I'm going to do. I got a blue screen here. So if you all, share with each other, talk to each other, and support each other, we can all kind of get through this, because it's kind of a struggle. It's not the funnest thing in the world. Yeah, Brian?
It's on mileage real quick. Far as like what mileage covers for chapters. And
That's something too that I just went through this with a different chapter, and that's something, again, that I would encourage you all to discuss amongst yourselves and make a policy within your chapter. What we do at National, and it's not what you all have to do by any means, you make your own decisions on that. We use the IRS reimbursement rate for our employees, but our situation is a bit different in that we have actual employees at National, whereas you all are all volunteers. And I just want to stop here for a second and say, every chance that I get, I like to tell all the survivors that I meet, and especially the chapter board members, I cannot tell you how much I admire what y'all do. There's so many of you that have those full-time jobs, and you're all volunteers. I take my hats off to you. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and you're doing a wonderful thing for these survivors, so thank you for that. But getting back to the mileage, what we do at National is we use the IRS rate. It was 58.5 cents up until July 1st. It just changed to 62.5. And basically how they view that is reimbursement for your fuel, wear and tear on your car, maintenance, that type of thing. And I realize now with the gas prices being what they are, it can be challenging to kind of make that all wash out, so.
I was just wondering, if you do an audit, how far do you go back? Is it just that 1 year, or do you
The
go back?
audits should be done on a yearly basis, yes.
Wouldn't be
Or
audit-
the audit review in that case, if your chapter is under that 200,000 threshold, audit review / soon to be called financial review.
Right, but I thought I was told that board members can't, there's 2 board members can't do the audit on the treasurer?
Right, on the audit review, the treasurer should not be signing off on that. They should not be on the audit committee. So we want to have sort of a neutral third-party approach to that. Somebody who doesn't maybe have a dog in that fight, so to speak, as we would say in Oklahoma, to kind of get that oversight. You want to have those checks and balances there. Yes, Connie?
I always suggest to my chapters in my region that we generally have excellent rapport with our banks. And our banks are usually community-oriented. And if you go to the bank who you have your account with, and you ask them if they will do that as a community service, you can generally get the branch manager along with a teller to sit down with the treasurer and do it at no charge. So that is a free service that banks do if they do it. But you know what? That's what we do. We just, like Kim said, get out there and ask.
Right. You never know till you ask. I never would have thought of that, Connie. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, Ellen?
What our chapter does, what our chapter does is, at the meeting, we'll pick 2 or 3 survivors, and then they'll look over, and the treasurer will have the stuff for them to look at. They can review all the past year. He has the receipts. And then if they have questions, he'll be able to explain, okay, this is what we did, this is why we did it. So they have all of that to look at, and then he has them sign off. So he's there to answer the questions.
Exactly.
But we try not to have any board members do the review. We try to have other survivors that are at the meeting. Doesn't always work, because we don't always have enough
Right.
non-board members, but that's what we try to do. But I do have a question, because we
Yes.
used to do it in April, and now we were told at one point that it's now due a different time in the year.
I believe it's the end of July. Is that correct, Barbie?
Yeah, the period ends March 31st, and so any of those reports that are done based on the fiscal year are due at the end of July. So you can do them in April.
Some of the things also that I wanted to share with y'all. Yes, Dana, did you have a question?
Yes, I've got one, yes. Hey, okay, so you have a chapter and you need the audit review done or the financial review completed. Can the new treasurer do that audit review or that financial review?
I see what you're saying, like, so you're auditing that period from when the old treasurer went out and the new treasurer's coming on board. I think it's still pretty much black and white area there. You just don't want the treasurer, whether it's the old or the new. Is that correct, Barbie? Yeah.
What if it's the only people you can find to do it?
Always a lack of people, yeah.
Thank you.
So there are some things that, as the new national chapter liaison and having some staffing changes that we've had at national, we're a little bit behind on some things, and I do apologize to y'all on that. I have a new staff member, Nikki Sparrow, has recently joined the chapter support team, and she's going to be helping us dig out from what piled up while we were getting ready for and at Police Week. So if you'll just bear with us a little bit on that, we're going to get some new forms uploaded for y'all on the database so that you'll have access to those. I think the financial review is one of them that we're going to be getting updated and put out there for y'all. If you need it urgently, just reach out to me. I can get it to you. There's a little bit of a process for getting it uploaded on the database, but we have a lot of things in the works, and I'm looking forward to working more with y'all in the future, learning more about what it is that you do, learning more about what it is that I'm going to do. So again, if y'all will just bear with us, but I am real excited to have Nikki on board now, and I think we're heading in a good direction. We want to be able to be a resource for you all and work closely with our region trustees to provide that guidance for you all to clarify questions that may come up as you go through your life in being a chapter board member. So congratulations to those of you who are new on the board, and thank you to all of you who have served in several different positions perhaps over the years on your chapter board. Again, my hat's off to you all. I have the greatest respect for what you do and where your heart is in helping these survivors. Thank you very much.